What's going on, guys? It's the Draft Nerd, and today we are going to be reacting to CBS's new mock draft that came out yesterday, and it's by Ryan Wilson. So without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, coming in at number 1, it looks like we got the Patriots going Travis Hunter. Now, is he going to play cornerback? Is he going to play receiver? Who really knows? But what I do know is that the Patriots don't necessarily have the luxury of picking a Travis Hunter. I think that the Patriots, if they're picking first overall, they need to shore up that offensive line with either a Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks Jr. One of those two guys the Patriots desperately need, so that way they have a left tackle and a right tackle, Michael Wanu, and then they have solid young pieces and a Caden Wallace, Layden Robinson in the middle. I think that's the perfect ideal situation for the Patriots. But they could also use a receiver and a Travis Hunter as well. So I'm not terribly mad at it. And I think Travis Hunter is probably the best prospect in the draft. Moving on to number 2, we got the Bengals going Mason Graham. Yeah, if the Bengals are picking here at number 2, getting an interior defensive lineman would be really beneficial for the Bengals, because that's one of the weaker spots on their defense and on the team in general. I think Mason Graham has the potential to be one of the blue chip prospects of this draft. He had a bit of a slow start to the season, but he's really starting to ramp it up for Michigan. So yeah, I like that pick a lot. Moving on to number 3, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars going Kelvin Banks Jr. And I do think he's the best tackle in the draft, the best offensive lineman in the draft. And I think that the Jaguars do really need offensive line help a lot. They really need a lot of work. They could go, defense here and go with maybe a Will Johnson, a Ben Morrison. They could even really go receiver, although I don't think that's the most pressing need. But yeah, as long as they go Kelvin Banks Jr. here, I think he is the best offensive lineman, so I'm fine with that pick. Moving on to number 4, we got the Cleveland Browns going Jalen Milroe, the quarterback out of Alabama. Now, I do think Jalen Milroe has played his way into that quarterback 1 conversation, and for me, he is quarterback 1 as of right now. But do the Browns go quarterback here? I mean, in a perfect world, yes, because Deshaun Watson is not it. But the Browns kind of dug themselves in a hole to where they can't really get out of Deshaun Watson's contract for like another 2 or 3 years. So do you bite the bullet and take a quarterback this early? And it is Jalen Milroe, who's more of a developmental quarterback to begin with. But I just don't know if the Browns can afford to go quarterback this early into that Deshaun Watson contract. It's a very tough situation the Browns are in. So, I'm in the boat of waiting another year, which is very painful to say. But I'm also not mad at them going quarterback here as well. Moving on to number 5, we got the Los Angeles Rams going Will Campbell Jr. Just Will Campbell. I don't know why I said Jr. And yeah, the Rams could go quarterback here as well. Matthew Stafford's not going to be playing forever. Sean McVay, if he's smart, would want to get another quarterback to kind of be the successor to a Matthew Stafford. Maybe Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward even, Carson Beck, someone like that. But they also do need offensive line help very badly. They're a little bit banged up, and, even when healthy, they're not the best offensive line. So, getting a tackle to Will Campbell isn't the worst idea, but you also got to start thinking about Matthew Stafford's future. Moving on to number 6, we got the Carolina Panthers going Cam Ward, the quarterback out of Miami. And Cam Ward is similar to a Jalen Milroe, where they're both mobile quarterbacks with big arms that aren't fully developed upstairs. I'm talking mentally and, being able to process the field. Both of them have made big improvements this year, but, Cam Ward has slowly starting to fall into that kind of backyard football type of play here lately. Do the Panthers need a quarterback? Yes. The Bryce Young experience, I'm going to call it, is probably over. Although he did look pretty good coming in garbage time this past week, but I do think his time in Carolina is over, and if that is the case, Andy Dalton is obviously not the answer at quarterback for the future. So taking a swing on the quarterback, I think, is pretty essential at this point. And going with a Cam Ward, I'm not mad at. You could also go with a Shedeur Sanders, who's more of that safer option and who is, probably more likely to run an offense, more efficiently. But when you're picking in the top 10, you kind of want to take that home run swing, and I think that is what Cam Ward, can provide. Moving on to number 7, we got the Titans going Ashton Jeanty, the running back out of Boise State. No, do I think Ashton Jeanty is worth a top 10 pick? Probably, depending on the team. I don't think the Titans are the team that can afford to take an Ashton Jeanty in the top 10. They need so many things, and one of those is quarterback. Now, I know the two, in my opinion, two top quarterback prospects are off the board. they could still go with a Shadur Sanders or Carson Beck or maybe a Miller Moss, someone like that. But I'm a big fan of Tajay Spears. They signed Tony Pollard. I just don't think Ashton Jeanty is in the cards for the Titans. I think they could go, edge rusher, offensive line, quarterback, even receiver. I think there's a lot more needs than an Ashton Jeanty, but that's not taken away from his talent. Ashton Jeanty is probably going to win the Heisman and should be a top 10 pick. I just don't think the Titans should be the team that takes him. Moving on to number 8, we got the Dolphins going Will Johnson, and I think Will Johnson's probably up there with the most talented player in this draft. Is between him, Ashton Jeanty, and Travis Hunter. So him falling to 8 to the Dolphins is super, super ideal for him. Just the thought of him learning under a Jalen Ramsey is, a match made in heaven for me. They also need secondary help. Could they have gone offensive line here? Yes, but the 2 top offensive tackles are off the board. Do they go quarterback with Tua Tagovailoa's injury? I don't really think so, but it is a possibility. There's a lot of options you can go, but I think getting one of the best players in the draft at number 8 overall, I think you can't go wrong with that no matter the position, really. Moving on to number 9, we got the New York Jets going Tetairoa McMillan. And yeah, if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback, after this year, you got to get him more receiving talent. I mean, the offensive struggles so far, that's one of the main reasons why Robert Saleh got fired earlier today. And, Garrett Wilson's not going to be able to do it all by himself. Mike Williams hasn't really been the same Mike Williams we knew before his injury. Malachi Corley hasn't really been on the field much. Allen Lazard, Aaron Rodgers trusts him, but is Allen Lazard really a talented player? Not really. I think Tetairoa McMillan could replace Allen Lazard's role as that big-bodied possession receiver. And I think he could, be really good on those back shoulder balls that Aaron Rodgers loves to throw. I like that pick a lot. Moving on to number 10, we got the, Oakland Raiders, the Las Vegas Raiders going Shadur Sanders. And I like that pick a lot as well. Obviously, Gardner Minshew is not the answer at quarterback. We'll see if Aiden O'Connell, lights it on fire this year. I doubt it. And if that is the case, they do need to go quarterback no matter, which quarterback's there when they pick, whether that's a Carson Beck, a Shadur Sanders. They need to pick a quarterback in the first round. And I really like Shadur Sanders' fit in that Raiders offense. I think he'll be able to just run the offense at a very high efficiency. And I think he's just a better Gardner Minshew, in my opinion, who's going to take more care of the ball. So I like that pick a lot. I love Shadur Sanders to the Raiders. Moving on to number 11, we got the Cardinals going Deone Walker, the defensive tackle out of Kentucky. And he's that big, run-stopping defensive tackle, but he also has a lot of juice in the pass rushing game as well. And that's what the Cardinals desperately need on that defensive line. They really have no pass rush production. I mean, Dennis Gardeck has, been doing his best, but if he's your number 1 pass rusher, you're in a bit of trouble. And I know B.J. Ojulari had an ACL tear and he hasn't played yet, or he hasn't played at all this season, but you still need work on that defensive line, and I think Deone Walker could be a good step in improving that defensive line. Moving on to number 12, we got the Indianapolis Colts going Malachi Starks, and I like that pick a lot. The Colts need secondary help in the worst way. I think they do need more so help on the, on the outside, outside cornerback. Juju Brents, I believe, has been injured most of the season, but he can't be your number 1 quarterback. I like Jalen Jones, but, he's not the most talented guy in the world. Getting a guy in the secondary in general is a really good idea. I just wish it would have been maybe a Benjamin Morrison or Takario Davis instead of a Malachi Starks. But I do think Malachi Starks is borderline blue chip in this draft, but I just would rather see them go outside cornerback. Moving on to number 13, speaking of Benjamin Morrison, we got the 49ers going with him with the 13th overall pick. And that's kind of, I don't know if the 49ers are going to be picking here at 13, but if they do, they need cornerback help alongside Charvarius Ward. And getting a guy like Benjamin Morrison would be, an amazing pick for the 49ers. If he falls to them in the draft in real life, that's a banger of a pick. I just don't know if the 49ers are going to be really in position to get a Benjamin Morrison. Moving on to 14, we got the New York Giants going Quinn Ewers, the quarterback out of Texas. And the Giants do need quarterback help a lot. Daniel Jones is one of the worst type of quarterbacks to have, to where he's not necessarily bad enough to where you want to replace him. He kind of gives you hope that he could be a good quarterback, when he plays games like he did in Seattle this past week. but he's never going to be good enough to win you a Super Bowl. So, you're kind of stuck in no man's land with a quarterback like Daniel Jones, and that's why I do think we should move on from him. And getting a guy like Quinn Ewers, I like Quinn Ewers a lot. He's got a big arm, but I don't know, man. I am a Giants fan, and I do think we could go quarterback here, but when guys like Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and Jalen Milroe are off the board already, maybe you can wait till the second round and get a Miller Moss, maybe a Carson Beck, someone like that. I just don't know. I don't like taking Quinn Ewers with the 14th overall pick, although I do like him. I don't know. I'm a bit skeptical of that pick. Moving on to number 15, we got the Philadelphia Eagles going Luther Burden. Man, if that happens, the Eagles are going to be scary. I mean, having A.J. Brown being that X receiver, Devontae Smith in the slot, and then Luther Burden being that third option on that offense, that is insane. That offense will be completely stacked with Jalen Hurts at quarterback, Dallas Goedert at tight end, Saquon Barkley in the backfield. I mean, yeah, I love it. I do think they need pass rush help a bit more. I don't think an edge rusher has gone off the board quite yet, so they would have their pick of any edge rusher off the board. And I think Harry Roseman would more likely want to go with that route. Although getting a Luther Burden is also just, that would just be the rich getting richer, in that offense. But I do think they need pass rush help a little bit more than a wide receiver 3 with the 15th overall pick. Moving on to number 16, we got the Saints going Garrett Nussmeier. There's a lot of quarterbacks going off the board here, and I don't know if that's actually going to happen. This isn't the best quarterback class, and with having, 5 quarterbacks going in the top 16 picks, this isn't last year's draft where, Michael Penix, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, all these guys were elite quarterback prospects. This draft is not that. I think it's closer to being the draft class where Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback taken in the first round than it is to being last year's draft where there were 5 or 6 quarterbacks taken in the first round. I just don't think the quarterback class is that great. And Derek Carr is, I believe, under contract for 1 or 2 more years. I think they're more likely to give Spencer Rattler a shot at quarterback before taking a quarterback here in the first round, especially if it's a guy like Garrett Nussmeier who has been playing solid but isn't. I don't think he's a first round, prospect as of right now. So I'm not the biggest fan of that pick. I would much rather them go with, defensive line. Again, there has been no edge rusher taken yet. I think the Saints are a prime team to go edge rusher. Chase Young's on a 1-year deal. Don't know if they're going to be able to afford to bring him back. Cameron Jordan's up there in age. I think a guy like Nick Scorton will be a way better pick than a quarterback here. Moving on to 17, we got the Chicago Bears going Abdul Carter, the first edge rusher going off the board here at 17. I love that pick a lot. They need pass rush help. Pairing him alongside Montez Sweat, I think that's a great pick. Could they also go offensive line? Sure. Getting a guy like maybe an Ariante Ursary or maybe a Jonas Avanyaya, Donovan Jackson, someone like that on the offensive line might be a little bit of a better pick. But getting a guy like Abdul Carter to go alongside with Montez Sweat, I like that pick a lot. Abdul Carter's really playing himself into being edge 1 in this class. It's really up in the air between Abdul Carter, Nick Scorton, James Pierce, maybe a Michael Williams. There's no solidified edge rusher 1 in this class, and that might be why they're falling a bit, but I think some of these other teams could have really used an edge rusher. Moving on to number 18, we got the Packers going Ariante Ursary, the offensive tackle out of Minnesota. And yeah, the Packers could use offensive line help, I guess. Is it their most pressing need? Probably not. Again, I think they also need edge rush help. Maybe getting a Nick Scorton would be a perfect fit in that Packers defensive system. So I would much rather go with edge rusher here, but Ariante Ursary is a really good player, and I guess he could slide over to the right tackle position. I would assume so. Moving on to number 19, we got the Chargers going Kenneth Grant, getting a Michigan guy. Of course, Jim Harbaugh is going to want to do that. And I think Kenneth Grant is playing himself into that defensive tackle 2 role. It's going to be between him and Dewan Walker, in my opinion. I think Mason Graham solidified himself as the top defensive tackle. But Kenneth Grant is also a very, very good defensive tackle. He's an athletic freak who's also got the size at 339 to stop the run. I think he's a perfect Jim Harbaugh type of guy. Granted, he obviously coached him at Michigan, but I think that's a really good fit for what the Chargers are trying to make that defense. Moving on to number 20, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers going Siobhan Revell, the defensive back out of East Carolina. Now, he did tear his ACL about 2 or 3 weeks ago, so most likely he's not going to be able to participate in, the pre-draft workouts like, Senior Bowl, Draft Combine, things like that. And I think he really needed that to be a first-round pick because he isn't playing the best competition there at ECU. Kind of like a Quinion Mitchell, where we wanted to see him at the Combine and at the Senior Bowl doing those one-on-ones. I think Siobhan Revell would have had to do the same thing to be considered a first-round pick. And now that he's torn his ACL, I think he is more of a day 2 pick, although he has all the talent in the world. Moving on to number 21, we got the Seattle Seahawks going Emory Jones Jr., the offensive tackle / offensive guard out of LSU. And we seen especially last week when they went up against the Giants, the Seattle Seahawks interior offensive line and right tackle really needs help, and that's exactly what Emory Jones can provide. I mean, he could play right tackle. I would try him out at right tackle, and if he doesn't work out at right tackle, you can kick him on the inside, and I think he could be a Pro Bowl guard for you. So I like that pick a lot. As long as the Seattle Seahawks are fixing that offensive line, I think it's a good pick. Moving on to 22, we got the Denver Broncos going Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan. And he is having a bit of a slower start to the season. Michigan isn't the best team, in the world right now. So he's having a bit of a slow, productive season. But we know Colston Loveland is a first-round caliber tight end. Now, do the Broncos go with tight end here? I think there's a little bit more pressing need. But you also got to get Bo Nix some more targets. And getting a tight end like Colston Loveland, I'm not mad at it. Moving on to 23, we got the Dallas Cowboys going Nick Scourton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. Now, I like that pick a lot. DeMarcus Lawrence isn't the same type of player he has been. He's also been injured. And he needs someone alongside Micah Parsons. Now, they did take a guy I really liked in the draft last year in Marshawn Nealon. I would much rather him get the opportunity to see what he's made of before you go edge rusher here. I wouldn't be mad at a Quinshon Judkins here. Obviously, Ashton Jeanty's off the board. That would be a perfect pick for him. But they need a running back. Getting a guy like Quinshon Judkins could really, spark that offense with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. I would more so want him to go with either that or an Isaiah Bond getting another receiver. I think that they just need a spark on that offense. Moving on to 24, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers going Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. And I almost always go edge rusher for the Buccaneers just because I think that's their biggest need. But I'm pretty sure James Pierce Jr. is still on the board. And I'd much rather go with James Pierce Jr. than a Michael Williams. Michael Williams is similar to, James Pierce, where they're both freakish athletes. But I just like the tools of James Pierce Jr. a little bit more than Michael Williams. Moving on to 25, we got the Buffalo Bills going Emeka Egbuka. And yeah, I don't necessarily like the Bills going receiver in the first round. I think what they got going on with, kind of spreading that ball out throughout the entire receiving corps with guys like Keon Coleman, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, I think that's, better. I don't think there's an alpha receiver here at 25. I don't think Emeka Egbuka is going to be that alpha receiver. So I'd much rather go with a different position here and maybe get another receiver in the second or third round to kind of help bolster that receiving corps. Moving on to 26 here, we got the Ravens going Josh Simmons. I was supposed to play right tackle or maybe be the heir apparent to Ronnie Stanley. But really, I think he would play right tackle. And the Ravens need help on that right side of the offensive line, mainly right tackle. And I think Josh Simmons could be that. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there's a better tackle prospect than a Josh Simmons. And I mean, you could go with a Jonas Savigny who, could play right tackle or push into guard, either one. He's a little bit more flexible, but I'm not mad at that pick. I don't necessarily know if Josh Simmons is a first-round caliber player. I kind of like him more in the second round, but the Ravens need offensive line help, so I'm not too terribly mad at it. 27, we got the Atlanta Falcons going James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. And like I said earlier, I really like James Pierce and his tools. He might not be the most technically refined edge rusher in the world, but he's got all the tools in the world. And I think that the Falcons need that desperately. They need pass rush help in the worst way. Matthew Judon's, contributed a good amount, but I don't think they've signed him to a contract yet, so he might be gone after this year. And if that is the case, the Falcons really have nobody to rush the passer. So getting a James Pierce Jr. here at 27, I think that's a steal in my opinion. Moving on to 28, we got the Lions going Jack Sawyer, the edge rusher out of Ohio State. And I think this is just a perfect Lions pick, pairing him up alongside Aiden Hutchinson. Jack Sawyer might not be the most, elite pass rusher in the world. And if that part of his game never develops, I still think he's got a really high floor being a really good run stopper. And, if his pass rush game does develop, that's just a cherry on top in my opinion. But he's just such a Lions and Dan Campbell type of player. I like that pick a lot. Moving on to 29, we got the Commanders going Denzel Burke, the cornerback out of Ohio State. And the Commanders just need secondary help. No matter who's on the board, they gotta go either cornerback or maybe even safety. So getting a guy like Denzel Burke is a home run of a pick in my opinion. Emmanuel Forbes is obviously not that guy. He's looking more and more like a bust as the weeks go on. So getting a Denzel Burke to be that cornerback one, I think it's a really good pick. Moving on to 30, we got the Texans going TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle out of South Carolina. And yeah, he's more of an athletic defensive tackle who can provide pass rush help. The Texans don't really need much. Whatever they pick is probably going to be a solid pick. They could maybe go with running back here. Joe Mixon's up there in age, and I don't think he's signed to that massive of a contract to where they can't get out of it after a year or two. So running back could be in play here. What else? Linebacker, maybe. I don't know. They don't really need much, so I like to pick TJ Sanders here. I don't mind that at all. Moving on to 31 here, we got the Kansas City Chiefs taking Harold Perkins, the linebacker out of LSU, and he also tore his ACL here recently, so he's another player that probably won't, work out pre-draft. And so I think that's going to hurt him a lot. I think that's why he slipped here to 31. I think he might slip out of the first round in general. But if the Chiefs are here, they obviously don't need much. Linebacker is one of their needs. And, Harold Perkins more of that, guy who can be a linebacker but can also blitz off the edge as well when they need him to. I think that Steve Spagnuolo would really, really utilize Harold Perkins to the best of his abilities. So, I like that pick a lot. And then moving on to 32, we got the New York Jets. Didn't they already? Yeah, the Jets already had it. So I guess they're trading. So yeah, I think they're trading back into the first round to take Carson Beck to be that heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. And, I'm not mad at that. Let's see if they say what they gave away. The Jets get Tetairoa McMillan at number 9 and trade back into the first round to get Carson Beck. Yeah. So they're trading about, 9 spots to get the quarterback of the future. I like that pick a lot. I mean, has Carson Beck played the best this season so far? Not really. But I still think he could be a really high floor quarterback for a team like the Jets who eventually are going to need a quarterback once Aaron Rodgers retires. So I'm not terribly mad at that pick, but that does make it 6 quarterbacks in the first round. I don't think that's going to happen. But besides that, I didn't mind this mock draft. Like I said, too many quarterbacks in the first round in my opinion, but besides that, it was a solid mock draft. Let me know what you guys think of it down in the comments, and as always, I'm the Draft Nerd, and thanks for watching.